Ever feel like you're just like drowning in stuff? You know, like everywhere you look, new phone, new clothes, gotta have it, gotta do this, gotta be there.
Yeah.
It's like the world just hit it fast forward on like buying things.
Right.
And we're diving into all of that today.
Yeah.
Hyperconsumption, but we really want to understand the why.
Yeah, and that's what's so cool about this research
Okay.
from Dimitrova, Ilieva, and Stanev.
Right.
They don't just talk about it; they actually try to measure it.
Interesting.
It's like they're building like a hyperconsumption meter.
I like that. Okay, a hyperconsumption meter. So how do you even begin to measure something like that? What are the units?
So they break it down into 4 key dimensions of
Okay.
hyperconsumption behavior, or HB.
HB.
And what I think is interesting is it's not just about amassing like a mountain of things.
Really? Okay, so lay it out for me. What are these 4 dimensions of HB?
So the first one might surprise you. It's shopping control,
Yeah.
specifically around food.
Okay.
And we're talking about like that experience where like you go to the grocery store. Yep.
For like a couple things, and you leave with like way more than you need,
Happens every time.
and then like half of it ends up in the back of the fridge.
Oh, tell me about it. Those buy one, get one free deals get me every single time.
Of course. Yeah.
But how does that play into this whole hyperconsumption thing?
Well, think about the impact on food waste.
That's true.
It's huge, like
Huge problem.
a massive sustainability issue.
Right.
And so this dimension looks at like how susceptible we are to the marketing,
Yeah.
to the store layouts, to these deals,
Yeah.
when we don't even really need the food.
Yeah, it's like the planet's taking a silent hit
Yes,
every time we overbuy like that.
exactly.
Okay, so that's food. What's the next one on the list?
So the second dimension is called perceived repair benefits.
Okay.
And this gets at our tendency to throw things out instead of repairing them.
Yeah.
So the research actually looked at how people perceive the cost, the time, the effort of repair,
Okay.
and found that those perceptions really influence our behavior. Yeah. I mean, sometimes it does just feel easier and cheaper to just replace it, especially with how inexpensive so many things are these days.
Exactly. And that's where I think it gets interesting because this ties into the whole like valuing novelty over longevity
Oh, interesting.
and this whole throwaway culture that we've kind of developed.
Yeah.
And it's like the opposite of what the circular economy is advocating for, which is repairing, reusing.
Right. Reduce, reuse, recycle.
Exactly. Reducing waste, ultimately.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've got impulse buys at the grocery store. We've got this thing with always wanting the new thing instead of fixing the thing we have.
Right.
What is the next dimension of hyperconsumption?
The next one's pretty straightforward. It's possession of large amounts of goods.
Okay.
So this dimension kind of delves into that familiar feeling of having way more than we use.
So you're saying my overflowing closet is a research subject.
Pretty much.
Interesting. But seriously,
Hmm.
what's the harm in having a little extra?
Well, I mean, think about the environmental impact.
That's true.
Constantly producing new goods puts a huge strain on resources.
Right.
Contributes to pollution.
Yeah.
And this dimension kind of highlights those consequences.
Okay. Yeah, that one hits a little close to home.
Yeah,
I am guilty of a little retail therapy.
sure.
But it's not always just about the things, though, right?
Yo, you're right.
We consume experiences, too.
Yeah, you're right on the mark. That leads us perfectly to the fourth dimension, which is experiential consumption.
Okay, let's hear it.
So it's that constant desire for new travel entertainment,
Right.
events, always chasing that next like thrill or Instagrammable moment.
So you're saying concert tickets, vacations, even like that fancy latte could all fall into this hyperconsumption umbrella.
Yeah.
That feels a little judgy, doesn't it?
I don't think it's about judging as much as it's about understanding the motivations
Okay.
behind our choices.
Okay.
And so this dimension explores how hyperconsumption kind of extends beyond just physical goods
Gotcha.
to these experiences as well.
Okay. I mean, isn't that what it all comes down to, though? Like,
Yeah.
trying to figure out the why.
Yeah.
Like, why we consume the way we do. Like, it can't just be about willpower.
Absolutely. And the researchers found that materialism, so like placing a high value on possessions,
Okay.
was actually strongly linked to all 4 of these hyperconsumption dimensions.
Okay, so that whole, like, I need more stuff to be happy kind of thing.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But how do you even measure something like that?
So in this study, they used a scale
Okay.
to assess how much emphasis people place on owning things,
Okay.
how central those possessions are to their lives,
Right.
and even how much they believe success is tied to material wealth.
Oh, wow. So those people who scored high on that materialism scale probably more likely to be like, yep, give me all the food, give me all the new stuff, I need all the experiences.
Exactly. It's like those 4 dimensions we talked about.
Right.
The food, the repairs, the possessions, the experiences, it all like ramps up
Yeah.
when materialism is a driving force.
Well, and we do live in a world that's like constantly telling us, you need this to be happy, you need this to be successful.
Absolutely.
So how much of that is like our choice versus like us being like programmed
Yeah.
by everything around us?
That's a great question, and it speaks to like the complexity of
Yeah.
this whole issue. It's probably a combo of
Right.
individual factors,
Yeah,
our personality, our values, and then like the societal pressures.
totally.
And I think that's what makes the researchers' choice of Bulgaria
Oh yeah.
for their case study so interesting.
Right, you mentioned that they specifically chose Bulgaria because of its history. What's the connection there?
So Bulgaria transitioned from a communist system
Right.
where consumer choice was very limited
Right.
to a more open market economy pretty quickly. So
Wow.
it was a very rapid shift
Wow.
from scarcity to abundance.
Interesting.
And it gives this unique lens to kind of study how those consumer attitudes and behaviors evolve.
Oh, so it's like a crash course.
Exactly.
What happens when you change things that fast?
Exactly.
Wow.
So fascinating. So we've got materialism and like big cultural shifts and then all these different ways that we hyperconsume. But like, how does knowing all of this help us stop doing it, especially when we're still getting all of those messages like everywhere to buy, 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 buy.
That is the question, isn't it?
It really is.
I mean, this study doesn't like have all the answers or anything,
Right.
but it does give us this valuable tool to understand these behaviors better.
Okay.
You know that hyperconsumption meter that we were talking about before?
Yeah.
Researchers actually call it the HB scale,
Okay.
and it can help us track trends and stuff like that,
Okay.
and it could even help us design interventions.
Interventions, like, are you saying like we could actually find ways to like hit the brakes on this whole hyperconsumption thing?
Yeah, like future research could look at the role of social media.
Oh,